careers outside of the high school experience, allowing them to really get connections and preparation for whatever pathway they choose. So a little bit more of the opportunity to release a little bit more control and allow students to have some flexibility to experience the community.
And to build on that, the skills that we're developing in the kids in these middle school programs are really looking at self-advocacy and self-awareness of how do I learn best. And so those skills will transpire in any learning environment they're in, whether they choose to go into a traditional model, whether they apply for the Inspire program, whether they go into the engineering academy, the health academy. So those are the conversations that we're having with our 8th graders right now, is what is going to be the best option for you and how do we position you to meet those needs. But really, those skills should present themselves in any learning environment.
I know right now we'll have the first group of flight coming up next year.
Yep.
And I don't know we don't have those options right now that you're discussing with them. So what are you expecting success rate for them to be able to come into the environment if they're not ready for learning that way?
I have no doubt in my mind that our kids will be successful in any environment. And right now we're looking at about 60% of our kids have indicated that they're applying for Inspire, Health Academy, or the Engineering Academy, one of those. But then we do have some students who just said, I want to try traditional school. They have the skill set to be successful in a traditional model. That's just their choice. They want to try it out and see how it goes and move into that model. And I think that they'll be successful. They might not be as engaged or have as much control as they did in our program, but I don't think that that's going to hinder them academically in any way.
How does this play for special ed students, especially like with interventions, and they if they have a specific learning disability and they have to receive an intervention for that? Does that happen outside of that or within that?
Both. We're able to structure our schedules or our student schedules, so if they need support or if they need, we have our math teacher teaching a 3rd hour. She doesn't have a 3rd hour, so she's structured her schedule where she can meet with there's 3 students that are really struggling with math, and so she meets just with that. That's like their class is 3 students. But as far as interventions for us, we do a lot of one-on-one, or we have a special ed teacher with us 6 out of 7 periods a day, so she's pulling her students as well and just kind of making sure that they're getting what they need to get. And then at Butler, interventions, if there's a math intervention or reading intervention outside the classroom, that takes place as one of their electives. So there are some of our students that are, 2nd hour, they have reading intervention. And so they're outside of our classroom getting that help they need, and then they come back to Quest for their 4 content areas.
And at STEM, we have a period called Connect, where the kids have an hour to get lunch and connect with teachers. And the teachers post where they're going to be and when they're going to be available, working on science or math or whatever. And then it's during that time that we schedule our labs for kids for that intervention time.
Oh, okay.
And then we're also we have a flex time too. So in the morning, the kids are either involved in a STEAM activity, which is a project that they've chosen. And then on the opposite day, so on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have flex. And during that time, we can do those interventions as well.
Kind of related to that then, how many special ed kids do you serve in your programs? And I guess this goes towards the regular ed kids too. Is there a screening process to get into your academies or not? Or, kids aren't making progress.
Right. So
What happens to those?
to answer your question, kind of yes and no. For flight, it's a 2-part application process. The first part is just basic demographic information and a question of why do you want to be in here. The second part is just a teacher recommendation. A teacher just has to say, yeah, I think they should be in there. And if they have those 2 parts, they're eligible for enrollment. We exceed our enrollment ability, so we go to lottery status. So last year we had just under 90 students apply for 34 spots. So we had to go into a lottery at that point. And at that point, every student is just issued a random number, and we have a giant bingo hopper, and whatever number falls out, that's the student that gets in. And then we go through all of the students and we generate a waiting list. So if a student chooses to leave, or we had some students who chose to go to STEM over the summer, they got into STEM, so they chose to go in there. So then we can pull kids from the waiting list who didn't necessarily get in the first round of the lottery. So it's open to all students. Flight is not a charter, neither is Quest. We're still a public school, so we still operate by all those same rules that you would if you were a traditional model.
In your population, special ed population?
Our population, just based on the lottery, has been consistent with the rest of our building. I think it's around 15%.
We have 8 special ed and 10 ELL students that we work with out of our 102, which mirrors pretty much what the Butler Middle Schools make up. And last year we were very lucky. We had 110 maybe, and by the time school year started, we were down to 104, and we're in 102 now. And 1 transferred schools, and the other one was a parent decision to leave that semester. So we're at 102, and that's the workload of a normal classroom teacher at Butler. So we're able to pretty much mimic exactly what a teacher has as far as students and ratios.
And Quest is how many, is it brand new or is it a couple?
Yeah,
years
this is
old?
our first year, so we just finished our first semester. And for next year, we probably will end up going to a lottery. We have 80 plus applicants as of right now, and that's to the end of, we're going to the end of February with our application. And then at that time, we'll have to see if we have enough, or if we have too many, we'll have to, go to a lottery. Or our principals talked about if there's that big of a demand, which seems like there is, seeing if we can start some other little pockets around the building and kind of develop similar to what we're doing now.
How is 34 determined for flight as your number?
It was set we cap it at 30 per grade level.
Okay.
So we'll accept, we max out at 30 for each grade level.
Okay.
And do you want to share the process at STEM?
Sure, absolutely. So at STEM, again, it's kind of pretty similar to what Will had talked about, that everybody's welcome to apply. Students that are at the Randall campus, and we're considered one school, so there's 2 campuses. It's the Randall campus in Saratoga, so that's K-5, and we're 6-8. We're walking distance apart, try to keep those partnerships going whenever we can. Students that are at the Randall campus that have IEPs, it's just kind of assumed that they're going to come over to our campus. If we have any concerns about how that might be a fit, I would say that Saratoga certainly begins to release the kids even more, as all middle schools do. We release those kids a little bit from, lining up and whatever. So if we have some really significant concerns about students being able to operate in that environment, that it's too loose for them, that they maybe need more structure, or because they may be impacted considerably by ADHD or something like that, we may, we definitely have the parents come over, take a tour, answer questions, and just make sure that that is a good fit for them, and really talk about, why STEM, if the parents really have some concerns about focus or something like that. But otherwise, everybody is welcome over. And then if there's spots open, again, it's the lottery process. If we have students that are outside, say at Whittier or Rose Glen, that are interested in coming over for some spots that are available and they have an IEP, typically somebody at Lindholm will take a look at those IEPs ahead of time. And they're only looking for things where there's a lot of outside services needing to come in. So because our schedule is fluctuates quite a bit, and because it's we're able to change things really quickly. Like we're gonna have core 4 to start our day, and then we're gonna end with STEAM today. We can whip things, change things up quite a bit. That would impact outside services coming in. We know that already. That impacts our speech and language people that come in. It impacts our music people that come in. It was impacting our special design Phi-Ed teachers. So they really look thoughtfully at what kinds of outside services need to come in, OT, PT. So when students are needing a lot of those kinds of services, we really look at why STEM, and is the home school a better fit for them to make sure that those services are provided to them.
And I would say along with that, we don't screen students out, but we offer the opportunity for families to come and see what it looks like. So all families who are going to apply, they come, or not that, don't come from Randall, come to a See It Live. Or if it's a new student with an IEP, they'll come and they'll walk with Ann or they'll walk with Becky, and they'll really get a feel for what it is. So they make the decision. It's not us that are saying there are only certain students who can come, and we're saying anybody can come. You decide, is this the right fit for you guys? Okay, I'm gonna jump in. So you have all, you're obviously here because we're really talking about the personalized learning and really shifting from that teacher-centered environment to really that learner-centered, that student-centered. So can you kind of talk about how, and obviously that you were also asked to come here for a reason, because I know that each of you believe in it and you're in an environment that fosters it. So how did you get to where you're at with personalized learning, and how, if you were in a different environment before, how now do you see it impacting students?
Let's start
Gotcha.
Well, coming from the kindergarten, first grade environment, I think that the biggest thing has to do with believing that the kids can do it and that they can handle it and that they're gonna wanna do it. And then stepping back and being able to let go of making those decisions for them, but thinking really carefully about how to set them up for success with it. So my team and I, we collaborate in every sense of the word. When we get to school in the morning, we sit down together and we are together with the kids in various groups throughout the whole day. And as soon as the day's over, we sit down together again. And so that teaming piece for us is huge, to be able to talk about what's going on with this kid and what's going on with this kid and what do they need. And so with 3 of us together all day, every day, like we literally do not work apart from one another. I think that helps us to be able to stay on track to set up an environment where kids can be successful with making their choices. Another piece is like our physical environment. We have 3 classrooms and the walls are taken down, so it's probably this plus maybe another classroom would be the size of our environment. And so it's not set up in a traditional way. There are tables on the ground, there are desks, there are big tables, there are little tables, there are bean bags. And so our environment really is flexible and based on what the kids happen to be working on. There's areas where kids can work independently, there's areas where kids can work together. And so the physical environment, I think, was a big change in the way that maybe people had, or even I had set up my classroom prior to jumping into this personalized learning piece of things.
Is your classroom set up that way, or did you guys decide how it was going to be set up?
We decided, so we're fortunate to have the open space, and so that's a big piece of it, is with teaming like that. I know some people have to go across the hallway to be able to share students and teams. We fortunately have all of our walls open, and so that was done for us. We didn't knock our walls down, but we walked into an empty space and we decided how it would be set up, and it changes a lot. The kids move the furniture around. They will let us know if they need something out of the environment that maybe isn't set up the way that they need it right now. So it looks different than it did on the first day of school, and we've made some of those changes too, just based on what we've seen.
I'm really glad that you asked this question, Christina, because I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately, because this has been the most challenging work of my career, but it's also been the most rewarding. And I was thinking back to what really initially got me into education, because I started out as a theater performance major, and I was 6 credits away from finishing that major and then doing my general ed studies, so it took me a while to get through college. But I was thinking back to, I was doing children's theater, and one of the things that I loved about children's theater was the inquisitive nature of kids and the engagement they had when they were excited about something. And that's really what got me excited about being able to be a teacher and to provide that experience for my kids. When I first got my job at Horning, I was teaching 7th grade math, science, and social studies, and that kind of disappeared. No matter how quirky or goofy I could be, I could engage some of the kids, but I couldn't get them all to a point where they were excited and happy and wanting to be in my classroom. And so that was kind of a turning point for me, in saying, what is it that we need to do to get these kids excited about what they're doing and whatever it might be? So it really just started with a dialogue with kids of, what is it that you like about school? What is it that you don't like about school? I found out from a lot of them, they wanted to know about my personal life, not to be like, oh, I know about your personal life, but just because they wanted to know who I was as a person, not just as a teacher. So it started there. Then we started building in technology. Then we started talking about their hobbies and their interests. And that's really what Flight stemmed from, what is it that you're gonna wanna learn within this framework that I'm providing you? How are you gonna do it? And how are you gonna show it to me? What is it that you wanna do? Do you wanna do a project? Do you wanna write a paper? However you're gonna do it, that's fine. You're making the decision. You should be engaged in that. And if you're not, then you need to make another decision. And so that's really what it goes back to for me is I was thinking, what is it that we need to do for these kids to give them some ownership? Because it's not freedom. My kids love to throw the term freedom around. They think that flight is freedom for them. It really isn't. It's the illusion of freedom because it's in the framework that we've provided them. But the fact that they feel like it's freedom, it's so powerful to me that they have that perception, even though it really isn't. I'm totally honest.
I mean, the physical space, changing that around has been awesome for my students. I think getting to know them, I mean, I'm with them for 4 or 5 hours a day. So just, and allowing flexibility for me and for them, build into their schedule where they can work on a project for 3 or 4 hours in one day and then not have to worry about it, taking something out each day for 35 or 40 minutes and then putting it away, they can spend a couple hours on it. I think, things like that, just comparing that from a normal classroom to now has been awesome. I think the engagement piece, just seeing it, I mean, at any given time, I would say 85 or 90 of our students out of 100, so pretty good numbers are engaged. There's always a few that, come on, what are you doing? But for the most part, I would say the engagement piece has been awesome to see. And I think that one thing that we've done that's been awesome in general, I feel, and we've embedded language arts in pretty much everything we do. And so there is no language arts class. So like language arts is in science, in social studies, in some math. And so I can get a lot more content in and do a lot more labs for science. But at the same time, the students are doing like half the work and they don't see it at first. And now they start to see it and they can count one project as multiple things. And they see that and they're like, holy cow, like, I'm doing half the work, but Mr. LaRue's going to count it and Mr. DeMarie's going to count it as a language arts standard. And the products that we're getting, like the stuff that we get back from them is remarkable because they're spending time and they have the time to build a presentation or write a really good paper. And so just seeing how you can tie in all of those. I mean, I used to think I could collaborate with people, but now I was like, wow, we have to in this environment. And so being able to tie like language arts into everything we do has been really good for our students.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, have you found that there are any kids who just maybe thought that they would be good in that environment, but it's just not for them?
Yes, I mean, there's a few that maybe are still struggling with time management or are still struggling with work completion. We have a few where we have structured their schedules, so they are meeting with every teacher daily, whereas some students I would trust that if you're going to do the work on your own or, I can turn my back, for a half hour and you're going to be able to get the work done. Some of them we have a meeting first hour or third hour with the language arts teacher just to make sure they're doing some daily work or, because they've shown that sometimes that might get lost in the shuffle for them. And so I would say the time management and the work completion are the things that some of our students are still struggling with.
But then you have supports in place.
Yep.
To try to get them back.
That's what I was going to say. My answer to that question would be no. We have students like us that struggle significantly with it, but those are the students that you're able to dedicate more time to because you have the students who are able to be more independent. I mean, we sit down with every single one of our kids every week. We have a one-on-one conference with every single one of them. We're continuously checking in. And my kids that I know that I need to be more on top of, I'm going to say, well, you need to be sitting in this room right now, so I know that you're working on this until you can show me that you can handle that. Or you can't handle having free reign over your iPad, so I'm going to use Casper Focus to focus you in on what you need to be working on now. I'm going to help you with that until you can develop those skills. The other piece is where a student could be off task for being silly or goofy or whatever in a traditional class, that disappears in environments like this because everybody else is doing something, so there's no one to pay attention to them anymore. So they have to find a different mechanism to get attention, to get that attention that they want. And so we've definitely had kids who have struggled significantly, and I think at the beginning of my journey I would have said yes, that this isn't right for all kids. But as we've kind of moved through, and now that we're in our second year, is it more difficult for some kids? Yes, but I think it would work for any kid.
So my why for STEM was I was previously at Butler for a little over 10 years. And so when I was hearing about STEM opening up, it sounded a bit of a autism magnet school, I have to say, so I was kind of interested because I do like that popular. And so the other piece that I liked about it and what I was hearing about it initially was just that, that full inclusion. And at STEM, the more I pushed into classes and the more I saw kids grow from being right inside the classroom and having those same expectations, the more, I loved it and wanted in on those classrooms for the students. And STEM definitely opened up those doors. So there is no resource room, we're fully included. I love what technology enables me to do as far as communicating with my students and checking in with them without hovering. I talk a lot about own your learning, much of the same things that I'm hearing from these individuals that they talk about too with their students. But I can send an email about what are you doing, how are you going to manage your time. I can check with the technology of what they're missing and have some quick communication before I'm having to come over and hover on them. And I've seen a ton of growth from students to be like, you're not going to hang on me, you're just going to have this communication from the distance. Yeah, I'm going to step it up because I don't want to go into the hallway and have that conversation at all. I don't want you to come and find me for Connect or Flex and pull me out of those environments. I want to be with my peers and I want to be doing what they're doing as well. So I love that. There's just lots of pieces of STEM that as it's evolved,
physics. So this was a huge shift for me to go into a class where every student there wasn't excited about learning physics. So I also, at the same time, I had the opportunity to have the iPad cart coming in as a pilot iPad cart. And technology really allowed me to transform that experience, to find ways for students to connect physics into their real life, to what they're excited about, what they're interested in. So it kind of happened a little bit by chance as a result of that. So students started looking at how they could connect physics to video games, to their favorite sport, to soccer, to basketball, to horse racing, things, lots of different random kind of topics they really loved, and they were able to go and find ways to connect physics to that. And all of a sudden, their engagement went up. They were more excited about things. At the same time, I was able to also connect in proficiency-based pieces, all these different components of trying to find ways to allow all students to learn and to really personalize the experience based on their skill level. Then the reality of the high school experience kind of started to become a little bit more of a hindrance in that process. I'm realizing that some of the personalized learning experiences and approaches that we were trying to implement became much more challenging in the system that we have in place, where students go from one class to the next. I only get to see them for, on average, 47 minutes a day. If they didn't learn the material in the time that I had them, it was challenging to help to have an intervention piece. It was also more challenging for me to find ways to connect their learning in a real life meaningful way as far as interdisciplinary units. So I kind of have been feeling that pressure to change the system. So my whole world and where I'm at right now is I want to blow up that system and redo education in a way that is more meaningful and more appropriate for students' needs. So as a result, Inspire. So that's where I'm at right now and where my mindset is. How can we change the educational system that we know does not work for a large portion of our students and make it more meaningful for them?
I think that goes, I mean, the common thread between all of these is we see that we have a system that was not designed around the student. And our passion, our drive up here is to redesign that system and say, the student is at the center of it, and how do we build the system around them to support that student if learning is what we want the end goal to be, not just teaching.
So building off of that, I know Ann and Carly, the three of us have really been in a school-wide system, which we're fortunate. Greta, Robbie, and Jeff have all come from a pocket of a school or it's a school within a school. So you all had a vision of what you felt like needed to be for education, but yet you didn't have anybody saying this is what you need to do. So how did you take, just from a small conversation or from a one person or from a couple people, how did you make it what it has become?
I would go back to the power of why was the biggest thing that was to the advantage to me. Is I started to ask the question, why? Why does it have to be done that way? Where does it say that? Who said that? How is it actually written? And when I didn't start to get answers to those questions, I said, well, if it's not written that it has to be that way, why can't we change it as long as we operate by the same rules, the same concepts? So that really was when we started doing the design work for Flight. We spent about a year doing it, of saying, here's what we know that we have to operate within, but it doesn't say how we have to do it or anything like that. So let's say this is still going to be our end goal, but now we're shifting the focus and we're changing how we do it. And the why was the biggest piece of how we got there. Why can't we do it this way? Or why does it have to be this way? Who says it? Where is it written? So that was a huge piece for us. We started to question it.
I think just for us was gathering a group of individuals that wanted something different or wanted to try something different, and just listening to each other and brainstorming ideas to make education meaningful to all of our students, and listening to the students too. I mean, this year we've changed a lot just based off of what our students need, whether that's they actually tell us straight up, this is what we need, and they're actually very good at that, or just, surveys at the beginning of the year or what parents are seeing, hey, maybe we need this in the class, or maybe this would help my learner, and so just listening to each other.
I never would have done this in my old school district. I was from New Berlin, 3 years there, or sorry, 5 years total there, now 3 years at North. It was more about the environment. Having leaders that would encourage you to take risks, try new things. I'm not trying to suck up, I promise. but really encouraging us to try new things, to look at new options, and giving us the freedom to be able to take those risks in a safe environment. Where we're encouraged to try technology out, try to create a proficiency-based system, try to personalize, try to blend. And as a result of that, it kind of just spurred a lot of those conversations of what can we do now? What this system isn't quite working. What can our next step be? So when Chris Del Ponte came over from STEM and started talking about what could this look like in a radical shift from our norm, I was interested in that, and I think it started bringing together the people that had already, because of leadership, been that fostering of those kind of ideas, could come together in a way that we could really create the opportunity to take that new risk and take that new kind of perspective shift and paradigm shift. So that's kind of our experience, and I think a lot of it is environmental. It's creating an environment where people can feel like they can try new things, see how we can change the system, and check it out in our classrooms and see if it works out.
And there's another piece to that too, because so you've got the risk and you've got the leadership support to take the risk, but then also I think at some point doing this kind of work, you get this sense of being under a microscope, because people are looking at you and looking to you to have the answer, to know exactly how it's going to work. And you get that sense, but you have to remember that it's a learning process for you too, and you're still trying to figure it out. And it's nice to be able to have other people to talk to and to collaborate with, and to just bounce ideas off of, or figure out what are you doing and what can we do, or how can we do that. So I mean, that's the other piece. It's fun to have the freedom to take those risks, but there also is that piece of, oh my gosh, I have this risk, I'm going to lose eyes on me right now. What if this doesn't work? But you just have to kind of get ready.
Your freedom is in the illusion.
It is. It carries over. I never knew.
But I do think one of the things with Waukesha is they aren't saying, yeah, go ahead and try it. Like, and we'll see you fail. I mean, look at, there's a variety of different programs where you're encouraged over and over again for innovation. So, even though, okay, it's all eyes are on you, what do they have going on at dancing? What do they have going on over at Morning? It's something new, but it's also completely encouraged in the district. It's not that somebody's waiting for you to fail, it's that somebody's saying, oh, that sounds great, and okay, that
It
might
works,
not work.
we can try it.
That might not work perfectly, but let's then try this avenue. And so I think that's all the environment, you said you came from New Berlin, I came from someplace else. It's the environment that's created here in general that makes you feel like you can move to that next step to really meet the needs of the kids.
The amount of support and reflection in this district is amazing. It's that reflection, that support, that processing through, it's awesome.
So, you've been going a year.
Yep. Year and a half.
Year and a half. So, do you have any idea how successful your graduates will become and how that's worked from the transition to high school?
Sure. So you can talk math data, right? That's the first thing that everybody likes to go to. We've seen significant gains in our students in reading and math, in their math data comparable to grade level peers. But I think more importantly than that, and even to the side of that, we've seen a significant growth in students' ability to be able to articulate what it is that they're doing and why it is that they're doing it. Why am I learning this? Where am I going to do this? That's the piece that's more difficult to measure. Those skills of them being able to communicate what is education to them. And so we just had a tour group that came through today, and the first question that they asked us is, they said, well, it seems like you have all gifted and talented kids sitting on the student panel because the way they're talking to us is astounding. My response was, no, I mean, that's a mix of our group. Some of them, I would definitely agree with you, are academically advanced, but some of them are far below grade level. But the fact that they can articulate so well about what it is they're learning and why they are, that's just part of the process of the skills that they've developed in our program.
So I'm assuming you're gonna track the first few groups anyway coming through as they go through high school, right?
Yeah, so data is one of those things that it's hard to get short-term answers for it. We want to look at the long-term effect. And so we need to have our program play out long enough to really be able to look at that data. So that's kind of where my mindset is now shifting over the next couple of years, is I want to say, we have this data now, we really need to dive into it and to look at it and to have it tell us, are we being effective here? Is this an effective model, or are there some changes? It's all part of that reflection process. Right now, we've been reflecting on the environment and the perception of the students, and as we start to accumulate that data, we need to start to
How that
infuse that
transition.
in part of that reflection.
So are you gonna have
process.
people in place in each one of the high schools that they would be feeding into to give you that feedback and that response, or how are you kind of collecting that?
I don't know that we have a process or a system in place now. That's something that I think that we need to look at now that we're
Going
getting
into
those
freshmen, yeah.
classes that are graduating. Because that's part of this new process. We've never had a class that's graduated into high school level now. So we have to look at how that's going. So, part of that process is us having in-depth conversations about where are you going to school. I have a pretty good idea of where every single one of my kids is going to school next year, pending getting into the engineering academy or the health academy or getting into Inspire. Those are really significant things that are question marks right now. So.
Well, I sat on some of the IEPs for the incoming freshmen in flight, so I'd be curious to see at least how special ed transitions on a flight. So if we need a person that is south,
That would be great.
get them on my road, or just give me a name, give me a list, and I'll follow up with you.
That'd be wonderful.
Related to special ed, if you're promoting the self-advocacy, and being aware of your abilities and skills, if you're trying to develop that in the students, are you having them try to lead their IEPs? Are you having them explain to other members of the core team what their disabilities are and how it affects them? Do you do things like that, or that just beginning stages?
Well, right at sixth grade, it's not required by law, but right away at sixth grade, they're definitely part of their IEPs. Kids have done slideshows, on the smartboard. But yeah, they're definitely part of those conversations as much as possible, reading the conversations during the IEPs, but not waiting for the IEP at all times. I'm talking to the kids about what's your plan, where are you going with this? What do you want? How do you want to be looked at? What kinds of questions are you making? All those things that we want our kids to be thinking about and cognizant of that, sometimes because where they are maturity level or they don't want to admit, some of our kids that are impacted by some emotional disabilities, that they're not aware of their limitations, that think they got it going on even though they're melting down in the hallway. So having those reflective conversations about what do you want? Where do you want to be? Those are going all the time.
I think not just for students with IEP, that's something we do for every single kid. Starting to think about it.
Well, that's something that we try to do in the traditional environment, is to have the kids realize that they can advocate for themselves and make people aware of what they do. So it just sounds like it would go with the philosophy that we've been talking about.
Well, it was interesting, the biggest influx of students that we had that weren't in our program previously to that are now in it was special education students. And it was interesting reviewing their IEP and what their IEP goals were in a traditional classroom setting and what kind of the standards of measure were there to what they needed to now be in our environment. And those conversations were initiated from the students and saying, well, my IEP goal that I had last year of getting a check off the learning teacher, that doesn't make any sense in this environment. And so those were conversations that were initiated this year, even going into map testing of them having to have an environment that they're comfortable in. Well, we didn't have to pull them out of our environment when we map tested everybody else because they were comfortable in our environment. So, right, yeah. So I mean, it was those kinds of things that they would bring that up and say, well, I don't want to go out for that. Can I do it in here? Can you do it differently?
And that's true, it's done too, though, having those conversations about map testing coming up, where you want to be. You want to be with us or do you want to hang with everybody else? And so having those conversations as well.
I'm running, I'm also a special ed teacher and running into a lot of issues with students in classes, either I'd like to hear your opinion on this, physics or algebra. Classes that are very linear and in a traditional setting, they're taught at a certain pace. And our options are, okay, algebra 1 was just too fast for you, so you can switch to the block, which is 2 hours for one class.
Which is still algebra, so
It's
there's
still algebra.
nothing lower.
No, but we don't have that option with all classes. We front loaded on for the underclassmen, but when they become juniors and seniors and they have to take physics now, it's like,
You have the opportunity to take physics.
some of them had art science, now they have, okay, they have the opportunity. But all right, I'm really apprehensive. We're somewhat apprehensive, somewhat excited. I have a meeting with a couple of the physics teachers and some special ed folks on Friday to address the failure rate first semester of students in our program more in physics, and I feel it's just, for some of it, it's just a little too fat. It's just a little too much. And I see a lot of potential in this personalized learning for them to either recover that credit, or do you have any suggestions for
Friday's meeting?
what that might be?
What I think what's helped me on some of those fronts, obviously personalizing to get kids more engaged, but also proficiency based, trying to be able to allow students to move at a pace that works for them. And if they don't understand constant velocity and they didn't do well on that first test, why would we bump them along to constant acceleration and then to projectile motion? So trying to address those skill deficiencies early on, right away, instead of pushing them along. So as a result, students in my class, they are required on each summative to receive a 2, that's what we decided, a 2 or higher on each learning target before they move along to the next topic. So that's helped me, and that means at the end, if it takes the kids a little bit longer to get through the first few units, to get through the materials for first semester, their grade still isn't incomplete. So it stays isn't incomplete going into the second semester until they address all of those learning targets and summatives that were incomplete from first semester.
But what happens if you run out of time?
Then it keeps going. We try to create interventions as much as possible. We avoid hangout times during lunch. It's really great. And also trying to find other support systems to address those incompletes as quickly as possible. Sometimes it does carry on over. If that means end of the year, carrying on over into summer school, I keep it as an incomplete. And my colleague is the summer school teacher, so it works out very well I communicate with her, these are the areas where that student needs to continue to work. These are the projects or activities that they need to continue to show proficiency in. And if that means that they were able to do that in the first week of summer school, then they're done. But instead of having, it's helped me a little bit because instead of trying to teach to the average, which is what I feel like we tend to have to do in a traditional world, I'm trying to allow students to pace in a way that's going to be best for them and fit their needs more appropriately.
And I think it goes back to, and especially in high school, I mean, it's hard because it becomes more of a systems issue because you have a lot more pieces of the puzzle that you have to work with. And so she's doing a great job of kind of fighting the system, but that puts a lot of it on her. Where we'd like to start putting it back onto why does it have to be this way? Do we have to move through at this pace? Are there other options? You know, so that's where we start to question the systems. We use the question why of what are our options? What can we do here?
It's just I was in physics last year, special ed, and we have kids sitting in our self-contained math classes, and the physics that's being taught isn't dropping the level of math out of it or even down to their level. And I have a girl in my class right now that I'm teaching like 5th grade math that she's still not getting. So she's more around 3rd or 4th sitting in physics as a senior. So like for students like that, what if it took us the whole year to learn velocity? But she learned it. I would see that as a success, not give her an incomplete.
And I would think it would go back to the standard too. Are they asking them to calculate? Are they asking them to be able to apply the math behind the calculation, or are they asking them to apply the principle? If we can get to the principle application and they can get support for the math, if that's a modification that we can make, at the core, what is the foundational piece that they have to understand?
I think that's a lot of the conversations we're trying to have for Friday is we used to have more of a concept-based physics versus the full-fledged that we're doing right now. And we want to make a shift. If our core is going to be a core, then can it be core concept?
We're working right now on developing competencies for each of the courses. And that's one of the things we're working on in physics and in the other areas, partially because Inspire needs it to be able to function. So the idea of physics, it would be, these are the kinds of skills or experiences that every student needs to be proficient in before they can receive credit in physics. Now, that might look different for an AP student as far as how they apply some of those skills or apply some of those content areas. AP student versus a mid-level physics student versus a core student. So we're working on those pieces. I think that might help to drive some of those conversations. Of what would it look like if we're talking about the idea of kinematics in motion? How could that look different for a student who's in core, where they can still reach proficiency in our core competency, but still be able to maybe personalize it in a way that's going to be more meaningful for them.
Can I just get your name, because my daughter's gonna be taking physics next year? And I can't understand what you're saying, so she's gonna need to run your phone.
So are all of your curriculum is it all competency based across the board? In your two schools, or 4 schools, 5 schools? Well, I know you don't have that yet.
So it gets a little tricky because we still have to operate off of the same curriculum as anyone else. So if all of our kids have to take the same district level assessments as anybody else, we don't have any leeway on that. But what we can offer our kids is saying, these are the standards that are being assessed on this assessment, and here's the rubric for them. If you can come up with something else that can still be measured by this rubric and so applies to the standard to show us that you're proficient, totally fine with that. So if this is the math standard and you answer these math questions and you can't answer any of them because of the way that it's written or test anxiety, whatever it might be, if you can use that rubric, you have to use the exact same language in there for us to be able to measure it because we want to be consistent that way. If you can come up with something else, I'm totally fine with that. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what you can do. But I'm going to measure it by the same rubric, the same standard as what we do in assessment. Does that make sense? It puts a lot more on them. They have this piece, but then if they're not happy with it, great, go back, make a change to it. I'm not going to just let you change a couple numbers here and say, okay, now I'm proficient. Just change a couple numbers. use the rubric to prove to me that you understand what you're doing. Because if you can't demonstrate it here, demonstrate it a different way.
That's how you show confidence.
We're competency-based or standard-based. So in each of the content areas we're following, we're working towards, we're actually using a portfolio, Waukesha, one portfolio. As part of the conversations we're having with students is, I'm not assessing you on, the content piece is part of it, but it's really the process of, can you communicate in science? Can you read in science? Can you write in science? Can you analyze data? Those are the things that I'm measuring you on, versus, and they can choose the projects or with a lot of choice. I think in the programs that we're able to give a lot of choice, like Jeff said, but how do you want to show us that you can learn this or that you did learn this? So, but to also show that you meet that standard.
I feel that it's proficiency based as well, wide. So we have electronic portfolios that the kids upload evidence of proficiency to.
And we're doing that same thing too, using the portfolios to show evidence of what they've done, try to be flexible with how they present information. A lot of the same traditional accommodations, stuff going on. I've got students that, as far as their math, they're in 7th grade, but they've got some 4th grade skills, and that's, I'm looking back at Common Core, whether they need to be assessed on there, and just trying to move them through. The nice thing about the schedule on most days is I've got a chunk of time with some of these students in math to get through some of these concepts and to spend a lot of time with them and move along a little bit faster. So I'm liking that as well too. I love STEM schedule for sure. A chunk of time that we have 70 minutes, 80 minutes, depending on all day.
And Inspire is going to look a little bit different. So the idea is all of the graduation requirements will have, for each course, we'll have competencies listed out. Students will be able to meet those competencies in different ways throughout their entire experience. So they might be working on biology competencies during their first year, but also finishing up some of those in their second year or third year. They might be reaching some of those competencies as part of more structured interdisciplinary units and seminars, or they could be developing their own projects where they can go and demonstrate understanding and proficiency in competencies throughout a wide variety of areas and disciplines. So
are you saying that for grade, that grade is sort of a grading scale to like a window? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, are you looking at a different way of grading rather than what we're doing right now? It would sound like, I don't know how you would grade something if there's some of the competencies in 9th grade from 9th to 12th grade. I don't know. I'm curious.
We're still thinking about what the grading is going to look like. When we say like meeting a competency, they can still receive a grade for that competency. Let's say that they got a 3 or proficient, or maybe they were too basic. I mean, we hope that we have a more proficiency-based system, but maybe they had a 3.5. Or we still use numbers? Is that okay still? I don't even know. But let's say they got a 3.5 on a competency, and then they're finishing up the sophomore year, so their biology competencies, and on this other competency they get a 3 to assign and declare a grade at the end. This is our kind of plan. We'd be looking at all of their full evidence of work from those biology competencies, and we would be able to declare a grade based on all of their work.
And I like to look at it from the middle school level. In theory, we're meeting them at their instructional level. So if you have 4th grade standards that you're supposed to be working on, and we're working with you on 4th grade standards, my expectation is that we can get you proficient in them. I'm not going to be happy if you're okay with getting a 2 in that when that's something you need to do. So we really look at, can we move to a model where it's either 0, 3, right? You've done it or you haven't, because if it's your instructional level, if that's the level that you should be operating at, not grade level, really you should be getting proficient in everything that you're doing.
So it's like proficiency.
Right, you're proficient or you're not. Here's all the criteria to be proficient, and if you're not, I'm going to give you feedback on what you need to do, but I'm not going to say that you're proficient, or I'm not going to say that you're partially proficient. You got it or you don't.
It's a little bit messier at the high school level with transcripts, and that's where we still are trying to make it. Yeah, what is that going to look like? Exactly, and that's where some of the things, once again, the system sometimes dictates some pieces of our actions and our policies and practices.
Can we go back to what you were just saying about fourth grade? Right? I don't know that I understood what you're saying. Are you saying if a seventh grader is at a fourth grade level?
Yeah, so if I have a seventh grader in math who is presenting that they need work in fourth grade targets, if I'm gonna be putting those fourth grade targets into whatever system that I'm reporting out, we use in conjunction with Infinite Campus. If I'm gonna put that out there, I'm not satisfied with my student being okay with getting a 2 as a seventh grader on a fourth grade standard. Because it's their instructional level, it's where we should be working with them at. We should be able to get them to the level that they're proficient so that we can then start working on the fifth grade.
It's like,
Will they ever
best
be in
thing.
seventh grade? I mean, do they get
So-
exposed to seventh grade level?
Yeah, so they
Okay.
still have exposure to seventh grade content because again, they still have to take those common assessments and those types of things. But we're on the instructional level standards, it should be proficient or not proficient. The seventh grade standards, right, you're gonna have to report out, like, you're not proficient, you're a 1, you're a 2 based off of this. But if it's an instructional level standard, they should be proficient in those.
And is that the math scores that determine, is that what you guys use
That's part of
basically?
it. We have map
Instructional.
scores, we have, we did interviews with all the kids at the beginning of the year. We also use a program called the CELEST, which is similar to map and places them within courses. So we have kids in science courses, social studies courses, English courses, math courses, all the way from fourth grade to high school level courses. And it's where they test it in. So
Okay.
we're working with them on those things. Those are their instructional level courses, and then they still have exposure to the grade level content.
I'm just curious how you determine what their instructional level was.
So at the high school level, you may have a lot of different standards open for a class.
Yes, and it could look, I mean, well, once again, we're still kind of figuring out what is this going to look like in practice. But that's why we want to make sure that we have, obviously, core individuals, core teachers working with students. And Epiphany Learning, and you can probably speak more to this, the idea of being able to make proposals regarding projects in which competencies they'll be able to work towards, and that would look different for each student.
Yeah, so in that system, when students log in, they go into their learning path, there's a little icon that they click on that says create my own assignment. And when they do that, they then can select from any standard in any of the areas that they're enrolled in to say, I'm gonna do this standard, this standard, this standard, this standard. And then they have to say, here's how I'm gonna do it, here's how I'm gonna do it, and here's what I'm gonna show you to show that I've done it. And so they go through that whole process that we go through when we would create an assignment. They go through and do that, and then they submit it for approval to an advisor. And we can say, yeah, that looks great, or no, you've got some work that you need to do on this because you're still not telling me how you're going to meet this standard. So that's a system that we just started working with our new company, and it's awesome that we have those possibilities now of giving the kids, here's all the standards that you still have to work on. Pick which ones you want to work on and how you're going to do it, and send it to me. Let's see if you can do it.
I would think the range of standards though, because the ability levels, and again, I'm a special ed teacher too. In high school is you've got kids still functioning at third, fourth grade reading levels in high school. You've got kids who are AP, and the range then that you're going to have and opening those standards up. So you're not just looking at standards for a physics class. You potentially could be looking at 3 through college bound, up AP standards too.
Yeah, and look at our math teacher, when I look at this Infinite Campus, the amount of standards, we don't have classes for our kids in flight. We have we call it 6-8 math is the title of the class. And it has like every math standard in there. Because then as Jonathan's going through and as he's working on standards, he can select from anywhere in the continuum that's been preloaded into us as far as what standards, what kids are working on. So it's overwhelming from that standpoint because it's just a massive list, but it also gives him more flexibility to be able to show what it is that these kids are really learning. Because up until that point, if I have an 8th grader who's working on a 6th grade standard and I've enrolled them in an 8th grade class with only 8th grade standards, I have no way to report out that they become proficient at that.
Right. Yeah, the reporting out seems to be a nightmare. Because how do we report out? How do we, if you have a kid in the same physics class, but 4th grade standards and the other one at age appropriate or grade appropriate or whatever we want to call that now, appropriate level, and both are applying for a college, how does that report out differently? And not to penalize or to hold someone back, but just so that it's accurate. You know,
The benefit of having a longer four-year program is that you can really work on developing some of those skills, addressing some of those skill deficiencies, so that they're able to get to a standard that we would be comfortable with declaring a grade for physics or whatever other area. So, and granted, that might look different, and that's where modifications with IEPs would come into play, obviously. But really working on addressing those skills at the beginning so that they can reach the same competency levels as their peers.
So it goes back to, we're navigating through the systems that are in place
Yeah.
to be able to, again, put the students back in the middle.
And it's,
right?
It's fun work.
So when you hear about advisors, what do you see at the high school level as the number of students per advisor that you guys would be managing? I mean, I'm assuming you guys would each have like some sort of a caseload that you would be looking at among the staff within the program?
for just broad advising, like as far as like homeroom kind of like.
For like Inspire, or however you want to do it, if you have a whole, like a team of 4 teachers, what is the amount of number of students you think will be sustainable within your program? And then how are you divvying that up so that you can have that one-on-one conference with those students?
Right now it's a total numbers game, depends on how many people apply.
Okay.
We're committed to making, to being able to provide the opportunity for this experience, regardless of whether we get to 50 or 100. We're saying 100 would be our cap, but we know that realistically for first year won't be that big, and that's okay for us.
Right.
As far as what that's going to look like in an advisory kind of piece, at the beginning of each day, we will have an advisory community building time. And we think that that's a really powerful opportunity to have small settings, a small group of students with one teacher who would then carry on over the course of their 4-year experience. Get to know where they're at, help to kind of mentor them, help them with their schedule, help them with some of their career opportunities. And we're hoping that that would be a small group, more like 12 or 13 for one teacher.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that addresses that piece, but really having a smaller feel in that world. And then also building into our schedule, kind of as Jeffrey was referencing with flight, more one-on-one advising conversations happening within the week to make sure that you do have that chance to
On
really
track.
look at those students and then look at their pacing and make sure they're on track.
Sorry, can we do
Well, do you have to do Infinite Campus in the way that we do? Like, we want a continuum. And it sounds like you're talking about a continuum of education, but then when we go into Infinite Campus, we still have to give all these ones.
Yeah, it's been an interesting transition into the grading system, because it goes to, we've been having conversations, we've been asking why more now with Infinite Campus than we were before. Because in terms of reporting out, we don't report out all that much in Infinite Campus, we report out kind of the minimum that we need to. And we use these other systems to be able to communicate to families and to kids how they're doing. So Epiphany Learning is a really great example of that, or the digital portfolio. Those are the other things that we have in place that we use for the primary reporting out. Infinite Campus at this point for us is just kind of this is something that we need to do to report out to the state, to kind of keep up with, but it's not our primary way to communicate with families and kids.
That is a struggle. That's what we have to do.
And it's so frustrating when the grading system is dictating how you learn and what you do. And that inherently just does not work well for me. So why are we having this system, this grading system, create the structure of how we teach and the practices that we're using and implementing?
Or does it accurately depict what the child really learned? I mean, I know I was a product of one of those that, you get your multiple choice, true, false tests that I can't do. So on every one of my tests, I wrote essay answers in the margins because I could explain why I wrote whatever answer that I wrote very well to show that I knew it, but I would still fail. Even though there was evidence there that showed I understood what I was talking about. So it's like numbers don't back necessarily. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they're very reflective when they're zero.
Well, I think it's more valuable for our parents and families when they get the weekly notice of the conference notes that we've had with their child. It's more valuable for them to be able to read through that than if I were to arbitrarily just put in numbers into Infinite Campus and they can check every week. Because every time we have a conference, the parents have access to it. It's a Google form right now. We're working on building it into a different, but they have access to see that. The kids have access to see that, so they can see everything that goes on in there. And every week they get a snapshot of where their child is and they can review what they're working on.
We've had the same type of feedback in moving, but this is our first year using the portfolio, so we use a system called FreshGrade, and we don't really report out through Infinite Campus at all. Even the feedback has been really positive, and it's shifted families thinking from like, what is that grade going to be, to like, what's the progress that's happening around there.
Well, and I would think, because for our families, they really don't mean it.
Yeah.
We put in huge narratives.
Yeah.
And then I don't think the numbers mean anything. I think they've at least accepted that fact that just don't worry about the numbers.
Well, and when you do something like this, where when you're recording it in a portfolio or something else, you really can put it back on the students because they have an awareness. So like we do student-led conferences. During that night, Krista, Jonathan, and I were available to talk with parents, but we rarely do because all the kids spread out with their families, and they have basically a script that we give them that they have to fill in. How are you doing in science? How are you doing? What are you working on? What are you really proud of? What's something that you really struggled with? And we don't really ever put what's your grade. Parents will never really ask, and they'll have those conversations. But that's not the focus of the conference for us or what the kids are doing. And I think we have the advantage because we have the low stakes grading. High school becomes a whole different ballgame because it's high stakes grading at that point. It really does, it counts for it.
What about like AP tests? When like does personalized learning prepare students for AP tests as well as or better than traditional? What's your thoughts?
Well, personalized learning, I think, takes on a lot of different forms. And I think personalized learning can be an environment where you can challenge students with the rigor to prepare them for AP, for all these other pieces. So it's all about meeting students where they're at. And if they are on track or they want to take on that challenge of being able to take an AP English class when they're freshmen, making sure they have the literature in place and the other supports to challenge themselves and get them prepared for that experience.
I was thinking, and I like to go get something instead. We always ask.
I'm not very good
I tend to hear a lot of questions similar to like, well, where's the data to like prove this personalized learning works, or are we going to track these kids and are they going to be ready? But it's sort of funny because right now, like we ask an 8th grade teacher at Butler, like, is the class you're lecturing to like going to be ready for high school? And like, is the data of your class that you just were in this traditional lockstep environment, are they going to be successful? So it's just, it all goes back to like, I don't know, maybe that's that skepticism for some people, but like goes back to the why for me for sure as a leader. I mean, I would always be in my building, someone would say something to me and I would say why. I would have a 2-word question all the time. Why do we do it that way? Why do we have to do it that way? And I think if you continue to cultivate that culture in your classroom at the leadership level, whatever level you're at, and focus back on the kids, like you can't go wrong. I mean, what if Jeff's kids are learning, but let's just say they didn't for some odd reason. They are building the more, I mean, take the academic gains out. They're building such self-efficacy and those lifelong skills that we complain that the kids don't have. They are, even the kids that have come here from STEM and are starting to come in, they can absolutely articulate what they know and want as a learner more than any kids I've ever seen. So to me, take away the A and the B and score that they got and the Aspire. Those are life skills that they would just reap the benefit for years to come.
And I luckily have another lens because I'm a parent of 3 STEM children. My 4th grader will graduate only knowing STEM. So she's in 4th grade now, but she came in as a kindergartner. She's a different kid. She is a different kid than the other 2 that haven't come in. So, and just only knowing the STEM way. They are fresh grade students, and they come to me all the time. They come to me and they say, look at this in my portfolio. do you think I could take this art that I did at home and put it in my portfolio for school and I just would like that? But they care and they're talking about that. It's not a conference time that I'm coming to them, or taking them to a conference. So they're coming to me in a different way. My 8th grade boy who's headed to high school next year, he's just a different kid. So he started studying at 4th grade and we talked about the fact that he was on the dark side at birth. And now this kid is talking to me about, why he wants to be in high school that he wants to be. And when I nag him about, are you gaming down there? He's like, what? I'm a STEM kid. I got this going on. I know what's happening. I have this done and I have this done and I manage this. So as far as time management, it's incredible. So there's a lot of tape on my windows from those young ones doing those projects. But they really manage their time, and we have lots of just interesting conversations about education. And so aside from just being a mom, but having the benefits of the educational experience I have, I just know that they're different kids because of that. So I'm really excited for them and what the possibilities are. So I see that.
Well, when you talk about college and career readiness, in a career, you're going to have to be able to advocate for yourself, you're going to have to be able to be articulate and understand your impact. There's always a time management. All those things are essential, and so many kids are coming out of school without those skills.
Yeah, and those skills are not grade level. And that's the difficult part. Too bad we can't push those as being more important than some of the others.
One thing that really, I'm curious about, how is your teaching in there, how does that work? What, I've heard, project-based, it sounds like there's a lot of project-based activities in there, but you also have to have some instructional pieces in there. Can you maybe describe like how you would plan for some of that, and what the instruction would look like? And because when I don't know who it was, said, well, you might have 2 hours to do this, and somebody else will be working on something else. And, I'm kind of curious how that works out.
So, for me, planning took on a totally different role because in this type of environment, it's hard to be like, oh, I'm planned out. I mean, it just doesn't make sense in this type of environment because you don't know where your kids are going to be. Also, you have varying levels of groups that you're going to work with that you need to be prepared for and be able to cater to. So our model, I'm the primary science instructor for our program. I teach science on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Those are my instruction days. Tuesdays and Thursdays are when I do my conferences and advisory. So I'll do those all the way. So on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that's a really intense science seminar session that fits into the skills that they're going to need to be able to apply on the non-instructional days. So I throw a lot at them on those days when they have those seminars, and then my expectation of them is that they're applying it over those days when they don't have a science seminar, they get a little bit more flex time. It works the same with literacy and social studies. Those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the application days on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So although a student might not be having a seminar in all of the content areas every day, they're still working within all those content areas every day if they choose to, or if they know my science application by the end of the week that it's done. If they want to get all that done on Monday and not work on it the rest of the week, that's totally fine if they need to build in time for other things that they're going to work on. So that's kind of how our structure works.
We're on schedule number 4 for our students. We've heard feedback, like schedule 3, they hate it, so we switched to schedule 4. And so we like that piece because they say, hey, we need more math time, or we need more science time, or we need less of this. And so we've structured our schedules, and then we go through and our students will pick the times when classes are offered. And so for me, just speaking just from what I live, science, so on Mondays and Tuesdays, it's about a 30-minute instructional period, but everything's on Blackboard, so they can choose to do it by themselves and take the notes or get the instruction, or I'm giving it to them. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays, we do labs. And so those labs sometimes are longer, sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're multiple days. But then Thursday, so tomorrow I'm going in with no science pen because I don't have science that day. There's no science offered, but there's some students that have already scheduled with me. They send me emails or through my calendar some makeup labs that they need to do before winter break. So like this week, can we get these labs out of the way? Yes. But then I try to meet with every student. I mean, we're in a big room with a whole bunch of students, so helping students with math or with language arts or things like that. So actually Thursday is probably my favorite day because I get to see everybody and I can kind of see them in a different role, and I can kind of see you in a different light than just being their science teacher. And I can sit down on the table and how's it going and how's math today? So that's how it looks for me.
Like you were saying, you really can't plan out. So it's just based upon kind of how the students are doing their interest in terms of that, you really have to address and be flexible.
Yep, a lot of flexibility.
The planning is having resources available. Do you know your curriculum? Do you know what the end goal is? Do you have the resources available and ready at any point so that when students come to you and need for them? Yep, here you go. Here's the resources. That's the planning. I don't spend time at home and be like, here's my 45-minute lesson plan, but I'm coming to these kids that I don't really that fast, and these kids are really bored because they're this part of it. That's what I used to do. I designed my lessons based off of I knew that these kids are gonna not like it. I don't do that anymore. I need to be far enough ahead that I have these resources so I have kids who are getting through it, that I can support them, and still have this available for these kids. That's what it is. It's you not necessarily being the person who has all the knowledge all the time for all the kids. It's here the resources for you to get this. It's on Blackboard, it's on this website, it's through whatever means, and you provide that to your kids.
What about in your K-1?
So we have a meeting to teach the kids like how to go from not knowing any of their letters to reading them. It's a little bit different in that instructional piece of things. So we still have a reading workshop. Well, I guess the TLM model. So we have reading workshop, language workshop, word study, and within that we can still personalize things, but a lot has to do with setting up again that independence piece. So we might have kids who are working on a study of nonfiction text features, and they're working on that when we're still pulling guided groups, or there might be a student-led seminar somewhere else over there. But to get all of that going, it was starting from the routines and building independence and layering one thing on after the next. So our reading workshop and math workshop are probably similar to the pieces of personalized learning that we do everywhere else in the district. We do have an inquiry workshop, and so our schedule varies. Like on Monday, that inquiry workshop is 2 hours long, whereas throughout the rest of the week, it's only like an hour. And so it's similar to kind of what you were talking about. We decide, okay, these are the skills and the content that the kids need to get. Our most recent project-based learning unit we did, the kids had a whole bunch of different seminars, and so they would choose, there were 6 of them, and they would choose the order in which they would attend those seminars. Some were flipped lessons, some were teacher-led lessons, and others were student-led seminars. And they would say, okay, today I'm going to go to I know by the end of the week I have to complete all 6 of them and the work that goes along with them and the assessment piece. So I'm going to do the seminar on people and their families today, and that's a flipped lesson, so I'll get my iPad and do that. Whereas there were 5 other things going on that other kids chose to go to. So then when all of that's done, then we move into our actual inquiry piece where kids are saying that right now they're studying a career of choice. And so we've given them the skills to say, I know how to do research and I know what I want to research. And so this is how I'm going to show in the end that I did that work. So they have, one of the things we talked about, they have manila folders, and those manila folders, they have envelopes, and we'll give them a page of resources with QR codes. So we have a link to maybe, we have a career expert video where we nagged our friends to record themselves teaching kids about this career. Or they'll have a book that we've recorded to make the text accessible to them. Or they'll have something like Pebble Go, which is like an online, So then they can use their page of resources and independently do their research and they take little notes on notepads and file them into categories, and then from there they say, I want to use iMovie to show what I've learned, or I want to use Book Creator, or I want to make a paper book, or I just want to stand up in front and be ready with a presentation to show what I've learned. So we kind of front load it and say, this is the criteria, these are the expectations, this is how you can show proficiency, but then you have all these options to be able to do that. But I would say from day one, they don't come in given that. So it's slow and we layer it on over time.
That's where it starts. That's where personalization. Why do I have to have this same process procedure that
Yeah. So anybody who knows me that 1 to 5 minutes knows I'm not very good time. I told them they would be here from 4 to 5. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I think the biggest thing I want to come back to is that they each have a purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. And it didn't always start with somebody saying this is an opportunity or this is what you should do. It was they truly believe in what they're doing. So if you have an idea of something that you believe in, that you feel it can work, it's not logistics don't work, it's how are we going to make that happen. So they're great examples of making things happen.
That's my hope for my battery today. I do believe I'm going to win.
Why?
Why? Because I've purchased 5. I need to get one.
Hope you can demonstrate that.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salt in the window.
No, I just. Thank you.